The following program is rated TV MALV. It contains strong language and violence. It is intended only for mature audiences.
Most of you know by now who I am, and know and understand clearly why I am out here. But for those who are unaware of who I am, why I am here, and what I have done, let me reintroduce myself. I am Hansuke Sato, the co-founder and co-leader of the Zero Tolerance Syndicate. Now, while I am that alongside my wife Aimi, I am also something that nobody else knew that I was. And that's a co-CDN Commissioner alongside my dear old friend, Damon McCarthy, as well as a member of the Carpe Diem Network Council. And while the head of the council, as well as the co-chairpersons, Spencer Wade and Tarina McCarthy, are all in Westbrook, Maine on serious business, I'm here in Atlantic City, New Jersey on serious business of my own. Serious investigatory business involving my fellow Commissioner Damon, that ever since Carpe Diem Showcase number 4 has not been followed up on, and has since all but gone cold. But my wife Aimi and I know better than to let something as serious as allegations of the usage of performance-enhancing drugs get swept under the rug. His aggressive reaction had Consequential Comeuppance to me bringing up what happened in 2000 all but sealed his fate, and solidified his guilt of the foregone obvious. He knew I would be able to get the reaction I wanted out of him if I were to mention his dead wives precursorily. Because what people fail to understand is that Damon's sinful pride is what makes him weak. His desperate need to make you all believe these lies he's manifested all of these years is what will be his penultimate downfall. Therefore, it is imperative and appropriate that I tell you the true story of Damon McCarthy's storied fighting career, as well as his fabled undefeated streak of 1,118-0. I'll be the first to admit that Damon McCarthy's name echoes through the history of combat sports like the sound of thunder in the dead of night. You cannot ignore it. For half a century, Damon McCarthy has been a titan in the underground circuit, fighting in dimly lit arenas where the crowd's bloodlust makes your pulse race. His journey began long before we ever crossed paths, when combat sports was as much about survival as it was about skill. I was young and hungry, much like he was when I first heard the name Damon the Juggernaut McCarthy, a powerhouse, unstoppable, and with the spirit of the other side seemingly impervious to pain. His reputation was a shadow over everyone in the fighting game. If you weren't good enough to step into the ring with him, you weren't good enough to be in the underground circuit at all. By the time we had finally met, I had already carved out my own legacy. But even then, there was a part of me that couldn't help but admire Damon. His victories were plentiful, his rise meteoric. It wasn't just his brute strength or skill that earned him the title of greatest fighter of our generation. It was his resilience. No one could outlast Damon McCarthy in a fight. No one could break his will. He was relentless, a force of nature that left a trail of broken bodies and crushed dreams in his wake. But legends are never flawless. They are human after all. Damon's career spanned decades. By the time he hit his 30s, people began to wonder how he maintained such devastating power and endurance. Fighters peak early in this sport. It's the price we pay for living a life of violence, for pushing our bodies beyond their natural limits. But McCarthy, he didn't seem to have a peak. He just kept getting better, stronger, faster. I had my suspicions, like many others, but I never spoke out at the time. Who would question Damon McCarthy? The man was a living legend, and if there were whispers about performance-enhancing drugs, they were just that. Whispers. But as the years went on, it became harder to ignore. By the time he was 68, round about the time of Consequential Comeuppance, Damon was still fighting, still winning, and by then the whispers had turned into outright accusations. I've seen the man up close. I've fought him with my own 2 hands. No one could maintain that level of performance naturally for that long. No one. And yet Damon kept his place at the top. He claimed his body was a temple, that he was simply better, more disciplined than the rest of us. Maybe he believed it, or maybe he was just too good at lying. But I knew. Nobody else wanted to admit it, not even Tarina, but everyone knew. McCarthy had been juicing for 50 years. That's what made him unstoppable. The drugs kept his muscles full of life, his energy surging when others faltered. Now let me take you back to February 25th, 2000. It was supposed to be Damon's final full-time fight, his swan song. The crowd that night was ravenous, eager to see the clash of 2 legends. Damon McCarthy versus me, Hansuke Sato. And there, sitting in the front row, was none other than Eikichi Nogi, the at the time soon-to-be retired Fight Pit chairman, and the single most powerful man in the underground. Nogi was a kingmaker. He built the Fight Pit into what it was, an empire of blood and broken bones. Damon and I both had fought under his watchful eye for many years, but by the time 2000 rolled around, Nogi was 91 years old, still sharp as a blade despite his age. He had always favored Damon, almost like a father to him, until that night. I vividly remember the tension between them before the fight. Nogi wanted Damon to retire, to go out on top undefeated. But Damon, stubborn as always, refused to listen. He thought he had more to give, more to prove. They argued, and though I didn't hear every word, it was clear that Nogi thought Damon was risking his legacy by continuing to fight. Damon, on the other hand, felt betrayed by the man who had once stood by him. It was the last time Damon fought full time, and it was against me. A fight that to this day I should have won. But McCarthy, juiced up, defiant, and encapsulated by the spirit of the other side, refused to go down. I took him to his limits, but he still stood tall at the end of it. A victory, yes, but a tainted one. It wasn't until later that the full extent of Damon's drug use became common knowledge, and by then the damage was done. Damon McCarthy is not just a fighter. He's a man, one with a family as broken as his integrity. It's easy to talk about his successes in the ring, but what of his failures as a husband, a father, and a human being? His wife Tarina has stood by him for years, though I can't imagine why. Damon's two previous wives, Magnolia and Denise, both met tragic ends. Magnolia, if you believe the rumors, died under mysterious circumstances. Denise, well, she couldn't handle the man Damon had become. He was distant, obsessed with his career and legacy, even as it crumbled around him. When she passed, few were surprised. His sons, Deshaun and Taekwon Walton, are cut from the same cloth. Arrogant, entitled, riding the coattails of their father's reputation. But they'll never be half the fighter Damon was, even with all the steroids in the world. Then there's his daughter, Emily McCarthy, who ever since I had her kidnapped, has always been in the shadows, never quite able to escape the chaos of her father's life. And one of his daughter-in-law, Amanda, married to Deshaun. She's a viper, manipulating her way through the family, trying to turn her children into the next generation of fighters. Maverick, Emma, Alexia, Caden, Harper, Benjamin, Selena, Denise, Aaliyah, and Deshaun Jr. 10 kids, all a part of the McCarthy dynasty, but none of them will ever live up to the shadow Damon has cast over them. They're doomed before they've even begun. And what of his other son? What of his son who for a year and a half was the Ring of Valiance Wrestling Universal Champion? The son he conceived with a woman named Cassandra whilst he was with Denise. I guess his eldest son Deshaun didn't get the memo as to who he tried to kill. Another betrayal notch on Damon's belt. Now I must speak of my own betrayal. My daughter Himari was once my pride. She was meant to carry on the Sato legacy, but like so many others, she betrayed me. She left the home promotion Lioness Joshi Pro turning her back on everything her mother and I built. And she wasn't alone. She fled with the wife of my newest protege, along with a so-called Canadian giantess whose name I refuse to even utter. They took what was mine, disgracing our family's name. I vowed to eradicate them all. My blood runs through Hamari, but she is no longer my daughter. She, unlike my loyal daughter Kimiko, is a traitor. And like Damon McCarthy, her legacy will be shattered. Damon built his empire on lies and drugs, but I will not allow my bloodline to be tainted the same way. I will wipe them out, one by one, until the name Sato is restored to its rightful glory. Damon McCarthy's career may be legendary, but it is built entirely on falsehoods. And when history finally writes its last chapter on the man, it will be remembered, not for the victories, but for the lies, the drugs, and the broken families left in his wake. His reign is over. It is time for the truth to be told. What the hell are you doing here, Damon? This is my press conference.
No, Hansuke. This is a Carpe Diem Network-sponsored press conference with your syndicate's logo plastered all over the place. And while I'm on the topic of plastering, clearly these people here in Atlantic City can see right through your plastered facade of a story. You and I both know that I never utilized steroids or performance enhancers of any kind. I mean, Tarina herself can tell you firsthand that I don't need drugs to enhance any performance of mine. Nevertheless, 25 years ago on this very day, at this very time, in this very building, we promoted what back then was considered to be the single biggest event in all of sports, period. Bigger than the Super Bowl, bigger than the World Series, bigger than the Stanley Cup, bigger than the NBA Finals, bigger than Starrcade and WrestleMania. And this was back in a period where the internet was still relatively new to the world. But everybody who was anybody tuned into that historic event. Just like everybody who's anybody will tell you that I won that fight cleanly, absent the usage of performance enhancers and absent the usage of any sort of drugs. It is not my fault that I am far more genetically superior than you ever were, have been, or ever will be. I trained my whole life to be in the physical condition I am in. I am of a genetic superiority the likes of which you have never been able to understand. I don't even understand it myself. But my sons, my daughter-in-law, my grandchildren, they've all transcended said genetic superiority tenfold. They have harnessed the power, and in time, they'll transcend this whole industry. Just like Olga, Samantha, and your daughter Hamari seemingly already have without your worthless Lioness Joshi Pro promotion.
Chairman Nogi was right when he made you retire. You think the world revolves around you and your precious family. You think you're so damn flawless. Well, you can keep pulling the wool over everyone's eyes all you want, McCarthy. What you don't realize is that the snake in you reared its ugly head the second your theme song stopped playing and you started spewing your typical tangent of crap from your mouth. You are a cheat, you are a liar, you are under the influence of performance enhancers as we speak, Damon. And I can prove it. One call to Dr. Labora and the rest of the medical staff, and your fighting as well as your corporate careers are over in the blink of an eye.
You can't prove something that isn't true. Clearly your envy of me and how far I've come in this sport, as well as in the sport of professional wrestling compared to you, has you delusional enough to think that you can prove a facade of an accusation correct. Because that's all this performance-enhancing drug nonsense is. An accusation, a rumor, a goddamn joke. A joke just like your so-called legendary fighting career. I don't know what's more hilarious, quite honestly. The fact that you're angry that you can't prove that I've taken performance-enhancing drugs? Or the fact that I let you live long enough to be this delusionally angry about you being unable to prove that I've taken performance-enhancing drugs. No wonder Himari left your promotion. No wonder the GWM went out of their way to leave you and your wife's company broke. You two are nothing but bottom-feeding leeches who want to see my successful world crumble, when in reality, you're chasing a dream that's already over. I've never been a man to regret anything in my life. But if there's two things I do regret, it's this. 1. I regret even taking that fight with you in the first place, because the end result has clearly shown all these years later what a little crybaby you truly are. And 2, I regret not killing you where you stood 25 years ago, because you wouldn't be spewing this bullshit performance enhancer steroid garbage all these years later, just because your feeble little bootleg Tomohiro Ishii mind can't handle the fact that you got bested by somebody better than you. You better thank Chairman Nogi for begging me not to f***ing kill you last time, Sato. But you better be careful for next time. Because the next time we step into a ring with each other, I vow to any and all gods of any and all religions that I'm gonna rip your intestines out from the inside and feed them to you along with your bowels. Because then you'll be well within your goddamn rights to talk even if it is incredible or worth hearing.
Damon, my old friend, I am sorry. Sorry that you have failed to come clean to your people. You clearly don't realize that I have more proof of you being guilty than you do of you being innocent. When I spoke to Chairman Nogi after our fight in the hallowed halls of the pit after everyone had gone home, he mentioned something to me about a secret lab you and he frequented trips to before fights. A lab that went by the name of Hyperdrive Genetics? Surely you remember that lab, don't you, old friend? And you remember the doctor you frequently visited with Chairman Nogi, right? I believe her name was Dr. Jasmine Stark. You see, Damon, for 25 years, perhaps even longer, I have been a step ahead of you. You have been found out in your web of lies. Now, whether you want to admit to the truth or not, even though we all now know, especially considering that there's record of Tarina paying for these treatments of yours, is entirely up to you. your establishment will be burnt to ash. And my syndicate will have zero tolerance for the cheating and con artist ideals that you have implemented for all these years.